They came from the frozen edges of the north, warriors with axes, long ships, and a hunger for gold. For over 2 centuries, Europe lived in fear of a single name, the Vikings. They raided monasteries, burned cities, crushed armies, and sailed farther than any people of their time. But then, suddenly, it all ended. The ships disappeared, the raids stopped, and the greatest terror of medieval Europe faded away. Today, we uncover the real reasons why the Viking Age came to an unexpected and dramatic end. In the early years, the Vikings raided Europe effortlessly. Small kingdoms, weak defenses, no unified armies. They attacked swiftly, struck with brutal force, and vanished back into the sea. But as the years passed, Europe began to change. Kings grew stronger, armies became more organized. Fortified towns and stone defenses rose along the coasts and rivers. England became the first to turn the tide. King Alfred built a network of fortresses, burhs, across his kingdom. Instead of helpless villages, the Vikings now faced walls, soldiers, and burning arrows. Europe was no longer soft. It was learning how to fight back. But military resistance wasn't the only thing stopping the raids. An even more unexpected force entered Scandinavia: Christianity. For centuries, Viking culture was built on pagan beliefs: glory, honor, raiding, and the will of the gods. But as Christian missionaries and kings gained influence, everything changed. Kings like Harald Bluetooth, Olav Tryggvason, and Saint Olaf began converting Denmark and Norway. With Christian kings came Christian rules, and Christian kings didn't want their people raiding Christian lands. The same warriors who once plundered churches were now building them. Meanwhile, something else was happening at home. The Scandinavians were no longer just bands of raiders, they were becoming kingdoms. Powerful rulers needed taxes, stability, and peaceful trade. Raiding caused chaos. Kingdoms needed order. Viking kings cracked down on independent raiders. They punished the ones who refused. The warrior culture began to transform into a structured society. The North was changing from within. And there was something even more powerful than war drawing the Vikings away from raiding: trade. By the late 900s, the Vikings discovered something more profitable than loot: commerce. Their ships connected the Baltic, the rivers of Russia, Byzantium, and the Islamic world. Silver coins, silk, spices, and furs flowed across Viking trade routes. The world was becoming connected, and the Vikings were becoming merchants, not marauders. Europe was no longer a target, it was a business partner. Nature itself also played a role. The early Viking Age began during a period of warm climate. Seas were calmer, travel was safer, harvests were strong. But around the year 1000, the climate shifted. Storms increased. The seas became more dangerous. Long voyages grew riskier. A silent force, weather, began closing the door on Viking expeditions. Then came the last great Viking invasion of England, led by Harald Hardrada in 1066. Hardrada expected glory. Instead, he met death at Stamford Bridge. The English king Harold Godwinson crushed the Viking army. Hardrada was killed. His forces were destroyed. Historians call it the day the Viking Age died. It was the last large-scale Viking invasion in history. By the late 1000s, Europe had transformed into a fortress. Knights in heavy armor, stone castles, powerful kings, organized armies. Viking tactics, swift coastal raids, no longer worked. A stone castle could not be burned. A knight in armor could not be cut down easily. Europe had become too strong, too unified, too defended. The world that made the Vikings unstoppable no longer existed. So why did the Vikings stop raiding Europe? Because Europe grew stronger. Scandinavian kingdoms united. Christianity reshaped the north. Trade replaced raiding. Climate changed. Their last great invasions failed, and medieval castles and knights made raids nearly impossible. The Viking Age didn't end because the Vikings grew weak. It ended because the world changed, and the Vikings changed with it. They did not disappear. They evolved into kings, traders, explorers, and founders of nations. Their legacy still echoes across Europe, not as raiders, but as a people who adapted, transformed, and left a mark on history that will never be forgotten.